Unlock, 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 unlock. Welcome back. Episode number 2, Unlock Your Bias. Woo, seemed like a lot has happened since the last time we were here. Shout out to Anthony, BlueBox Digital. If you got a podcast or anything you want to start, call him up, hit him up. Definitely the man for the job. And he a super nice dude, so shout out for that. Welcome back. Episode number 2, NFL quarterback, the definition of white privilege. I told somebody this yesterday. They said, uh-oh. So it's not as bad as it sounds, but we are going to get into the NFL quarterback, the definition of white privilege, talk about some of the history of the position, how it evolved, how it has evolved, and some of the probably couple unknown quarterbacks that you have not maybe heard of. Maybe some of the real historians have. But this is Unlock. This is Unlock Your Bias. I learned a lot during my research for episode number 2. So I became unlocked, learned some new things. But before we get into that, definitely got to give a shout out to everybody. 100 views in 6 days. 100 views in 6 days. So shout out to everybody. Friends, family, Rocks Nation, everybody. Skills to Heal. I definitely, this is all a journey. This is all a journey, right? So after episode 1, it went live. I started getting phone calls and we started having conversations. I call them unlocked conversations about some of the things that I discussed in episode 1 that hit people in a different way. And it's just a couple I want to just conversations I want to recap on. I talked to one person, shout out to Nadia, that said, hey, you need to think about the darkness. Because in episode 1, I talked about running from the darkness. But she put it on another level. We have to think about being in the darkness. That's where we can get our growth. Like she said, you plant a seed in the darkness, that's where it starts. We have to cultivate and grow from there. So definitely that was an unlock moment for me. Shout out to Uncle Warren and Brother Derek, talking to them. Uncle Warren, Big Unc, talked about an experience that he had from when he was young. I mean, it was just a big unlock. I mean, we talked for about 5 or 10 minutes, and it was just a game changer for me to be able to know that what I'm talking about on this mic right here is having an impact. And then lastly, shout out to my boy Wick. I told him I was starting out doing this by myself. I said, man, I'm taking a big risk. And he looked at me and he said, no, you're not. You're not taking a risk. He said, everything I've done, I've stepped out on my own to start. And then the people came. And you got to have that support around you, people around you that are, just going to give you that positive, that reinforcement, or not just positive. Maybe it's something, I got some feedback about a couple other things that I needed to work on from episode 1. And I appreciate all that feedback. So shout out to everybody. We're over 100 views for the first episode. It's on YouTube, Spotify. Finally got it uploaded to Apple Music, right, Anthony? Apple Music. I'm pretty sure it's a few more platforms. I got to go do some more homework to find out some other platforms. But thank you for everybody, to my Toastmasters family, everybody, blood relatives, everybody. So unlock. Now, moving on. Before I get into episode 2, I want to talk about something real quick. Okay, this is an unlock your bias moment for me. Trying to get this episode ready. I wanted to try to reach out to people to get some participation. And when you're doing something, when you have your own goal, or you have a dream or a vision or something like that, people are not always going to gravitate towards you. Everybody's not going to be your cheerleader. And that's what I learned. The biggest cheerleader you got to be is for yourself. I've had to learn to be my biggest cheerleader. I guess I didn't really have to learn it, because when you're trying to blaze your own trail, sometimes you're going to be out there. You're going to be on that path. One of my favorite poems is by Robert Frost, The Road Less Traveled. Definitely check that out. And a couple people, I'm going to have to put y'all on the ghost list. A couple people I thought would respond just basically ghosted me. So we're going to start a ghost list, and I'm going to go ahead and just kick it off right now. I'm going to just go ahead and delete your number out my phone. Ghosts. Won't be able to see you no more. All right. So now moving on. Episode 2, NFL quarterback, definition of white privilege. That title, it says it all and nothing. So what am I saying? No, I'm not saying that being an NFL quarterback means that you have a certain white privilege, but I started doing some research, and boy, oh boy, what did I find out? What did I do? What did I get myself into, Anthony? I'm telling you, I started doing some research, and first off, I want to start out by saying, if you have any feedback or any unlock moments, hit me up at unlockyourbias@gmail.com. And I love to hear your stories about things that may have happened that been pivotal points in your life. Unlockyourbias@gmail.com. Now, NFL quarterback, definition of white privilege. Who is the first black quarterback that comes to mind? I started asking this question around. I got a couple different answers. Randall Cunningham and Warren Moon were the two biggest top answers that come to mind. Warren Moon, of course, played for the Houston Oilers back in the 80s. He actually had to go to the CFL, to the Canadian Football League, in order to survive, because he couldn't get a job in the NFL for, we could probably guess, multiple different reasons, but it wasn't because he wasn't talented. It wasn't because he wasn't gifted. It probably was because of his skin color. Unlock, sorry, don't make you feel uncomfortable, but that's what's happening, right? So Warren Moon was the top answer. Now, I went back and I started doing some research to try to find out who was it before Warren Moon. Of course, I could go back to the 70s with a few names, but I wanted to go all the way back to the beginning. So the name that came up was Fritz Pollard. Fritz Pollard. First black NFL quarterback in 1923 with the Hammond Pros. And then I started doing some more research on Fritz Pollard. Man, this brother his nickname was the Human Torpedo. That's how fast he was. And this was in 1920. Fritz Pollard went to Brown University, which is an Ivy League university. So the brother was smart, but on the field, he was dynamic. First black player to play for an Ivy League school. First black player to play in the Rose Bowl in 1915. And he wasn't even a quarterback then. So during this time, it was only Fritz Pollard, and I found out a little later, Bobby Marshall, I believe. But Fritz Pollard, I think I said Fitz in the beginning, but it's actually Fritz, Fritz. Fritz Pollard. His actual real name is Frederick Douglass Pollard. And from what I learned about Fritz Pollard, he got the nickname Fritz, but he grew up in a German mixed section in New York. So Fritz Pollard just tore it up at Brown University. He was the first. Well, when I say Fritz, it's just first to everything. I don't know how many times I'm going to say first, but he was on the team. He was the first. He was on the team this was back in 1916, and this is courtesy of the library at Brown University, brown.edu. Got a lot of good nuggets from there. But Fritz Pollard was on the team that first time that an Ivy League school had beat Harvard and Yale in the same year, same season. And this was back in, say, 1915, 1916. So Fritz Pollard, after He graduated from Brown, went to the Akron Zips. Now, also what I learned, that before the NFL, it was called the AF, the American Professional Football League, APFL, American Professional Football League. So before the NFL, Fritz Pollard was tearing it up, and then it was him, and then I found out Paul Robeson, the famous African-American actor, actually started out playing football as well, was also out there with Fritz Pollard, but Fritz Pollard actually started out as a receiver, cornerback, and then eventually got to the quarterback position. After he retired from playing, he became a head coach. He actually became a head coach and was a quarterback at the same time for, like I said, Hammond Pros, which was out of Indiana. After he retired, from 1935 to 1946, there was a quote-unquote gentleman's agreement among what was now the NFL that there will be no black players from 1935 to 1946. Now, I went back and just started researching that time period, and ironically, that was around the time of World War II, which when you're in school, which that was a long time ago for me, actually being in the classroom and learning about social studies. But once again, like I tell my wife, it's God, the family, and Google. Google in my top 5. I went to history.com and just was doing some research just on the Civil War, man, and just I learned so much in a few minutes just about how everything unfolded with Nazi Germany and how the U.S., Pearl Harbor and everything. But it was during that time, I guess you can call it a blackout in the NFL. So after 46, players slowly started being able to trickle in. And this is where I learned about, I'm going to throw a new name that I did not know, one of the second NFL players ever, players drafted in the first or second round, George Taliaferro. George Taliaferro was, in 1951, was the first black player drafted, or first black player drafted in 1951. According to Merriam-Webster, the definition of white privilege, the set of social and economic advantages that white people had by virtue of their race. Now, when we think about the black quarterback, and we know Fritz Pollard was the first pioneer and the first black, African-American or black head coach. So after 1923, there was no African-American head coach until 1989. That's 66 years. Okay, so the unlocked question of the day is, after hearing that, a 66-year gap in black head coaches, does it confirm, deny, or does it create a bias? Let me know. Unlockyourbias@gmail.com. That's the unlocked question of the day. Does it create a new bias in you? Does it confirm, or just doesn't even make sense to you? 66 years after Fritz Pollard, we had our next African-American coach, which was Art Shell, by the way, Oakland Raiders. But after the quarterback with Fritz Pollard, it didn't take that long. Now, the next quarterback that I discovered, that I became unlocked on this journey, was Marlon Briscoe. Brother went to Omaha University back in the late 50s, was a star wide receiver, cornerback, but his dream was to play quarterback. His nickname was the Musician, and he was drafted in 1967. He was the first African-American quarterback to start in an NFL game in 1968 for the Denver Broncos. Now, upon doing my research, one thing that I found about black quarterbacks was typically they got their chance after the starter was hurt. So it wasn't a situation where their talents were recognized, and it was not an even playing field. As much as we fight for that, as much as we want to believe that, as much as you maybe want to believe that, it was not an even playing field back then. So Marlon Briscoe got his start after the quarterback got hurt, and boy, he blew up. First black quarterback to throw for 300 yards in the game. Next season, though, it was Marlon said that things were eerie around training camp. He was cold shoulder, not invited to the meetings, and eventually he was cut following season. So after that, Marlon was traded to the Los Angeles Rams, where he was able to mentor another quarterback named James Shaq Harris. James Shaq Harris was the first African-American to start in a playoff game. And Marlon, even Shaq Harris said, Marlon gave me a lot of pointers, taught him some techniques on how to play the position. But to go from being a starter, 300-yard passing game, successful season, even back then, Dave Smith, a scout for the Saints, said, quote, "He's got the greatest arm I've ever seen on a quarterback, college or pro." So how do you get cut the next season? Why? Was he not good enough? I think not. We have to think about that. So after that, James Shaq Harris, he did his thing. And he ended up leading the Rams to the playoff victory and went to the Pro Bowl. That was in 1974. After that, you had a few more black quarterbacks, Vince Evans, and then Doug Williams started back in the mid-'70s. And one thing I learned about Doug Williams, now here's an unlock on me. Growing up, my favorite team was the Washington Commanders. Back then, back in the 80s when I was watching them, they had Joe Theismann, John Riggins, the Smurfs, Darryl Green. That was my team. But once I found out that they were one of the last NFL teams to draft a black player, this is me 10 years ago, just thinking about how everything was going, how even for me, I wasn't diluted by sports. I'm not diluted by sports. I'm a fan, but I'm not a fanatic. And there's nothing wrong with being a fanatic. That's cool. If you got your team, live or die. Some people go all in. But I just had to look at it from a different point of view. We cannot get enamored or sucked in by what we see on the surface. We still have to remember that anything we watching has a history, and history treats people a certain way. And with history, some people don't like history to be changed. Some people don't like history to be exposed because it empowers you once you're exposed to the truth about history. And that's what this NFL quarterback, the definition of white privilege, is about. It's really not about saying that, white quarterbacks are better or white quarterbacks are getting opportunities because they're white. But when you really look at it, I was talking to my boy Vanguard. We were just talking, went to, I'm pretty sure you can see this shirt, right? Okay. Last weekend, we went to go see 50 Cent. Me and my boy Vanguard, we went to go see 50 Cent, Busta Rhymes, Jeremiah, man. It was a blast. It was a blast. The final lap tour, 50 Cent came out there. He did his thing. He did all the hits. I don't even know. Can I upload clips of the concert to YouTube without getting in trouble? Because I thought about this. Anthony and I are talking about the copyright system on YouTube and how it's like a spaghetti model, you know what I'm saying? But I was thinking about that because even though I recorded it, it's still his music, right? So if I upload it, I could still get flagged, right? Technically. Yeah, if it's enough. So I can't put 1 minute up there. Even though it was a blast, when that Many Men came on, shut it down. But I mean, I don't even know. I lost my train of thought. I started talking about 50 Cent. And I just got mad respect for 50 because, of course, just the business mindset. I mean, he's a whole unlocked story himself on how he started. It was like him against the world type. And you could say whatever. Some people hate him. Some people love him. Some people think he just is over the top. But he found a way to create multiple brands and make smart business decisions that allow him to be free to do what he want to do. You know, the whole Power series, that's empowering, right? And that's what this Unlock Your Bias is about. Is about being empowered, especially for what this topic is about sports, about football. And I was hoping that there would be an example to share, you know, some experiences for the young black youth that are aspiring to be quarterbacks. Of course, the stereotype is that we're not smart enough for the position. I was even reading a Time.com article, Time magazine. It was on the history of the black quarterbacks, and the article was talking about Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, you know, this past year. That was history. First two African-American quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. But the article started talking about Doug Williams, which is leading me back to my own unlock about the Washington Commanders, how I decided that I was not rooting for them anymore. And I shut them off. People ask me, hey, what's your favorite team? I don't have one. Or my adopted team was Carolina Panthers. But I really was just like, whatever. And then, of course, the flag protests came back in 19 and 20 with the whole protest situation with Colin Kaepernick. And I think people on both sides were turned off at that point. I got a friend that was a diehard Philly fan, and he stopped watching football. And he was like, man, I ain't watched it in a whole year. And I think he still don't really watch it. So it's mixed feelings on both sides. But in regards to the NFL quarterback, everything that they have to go through, being a black quarterback, once again with Doug Williams, Super Bowl champion 1988. But when I was going and doing my homework, he only played 2 regular season games that year that he won the Super Bowl. Played 2 regular season games. The only reason he got into to be the Super Bowl winning quarterback was because Jay Schrader got hurt in the second round of the playoffs. So I got this picture, I think I'll be able to post it, and it just shows Doug Williams so elated. And when you look at that picture, you would just think, man, he played the whole season and he got that ring. Oh, he played 4 games to get the ring because he had to sit behind. And Jay Schrader, I remember Jay Schrader. He was a decent quarterback. I'm not mad at Jay Schrader, but he wasn't better than Doug Williams. But Doug Williams had to sit and wait till he got hurt. Imagine if Schrader wouldn't have gotten hurt. Would they have won the Super Bowl that year? We'll never know. But that was history, 1988. That's the definition so far, is that the black quarterbacks back at that time, even up until 1988, had to wait until something happened in order to get that opportunity. But you know the old saying, and the saying never gets old, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. We'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Eggs Up Grill in Riverview. Eggs Up Grill is open daily from 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. If you want to head on out to Eggs Up Grill in Riverview, go to their Instagram at EUG Riverview. That's at EUG Riverview. Eggs Up Grill. See you there. I'm hungry. Ty's Cut Zone. I've been going to the same barber for 5 years. You know why? Because Ty get me fresh every time. He's paying attention to detail and he's giving you exactly what you want. Ty is the man. So when it comes to Ty's Cut Zone, it's going to be at a private and secure location. When you walk in, you're going to feel like, I need a cut. When you're going to walk out, you're going to feel fresh. Couple cool amenities about Ty's Cut Zone: free drinks, flat screen TV, and some old classic, old school barber conversation. Ty specializes in giving the young men of all ages cuts that will give them confidence and the swag that they need. For appointments only, hit up Ty at 813-447-3146. Or if you're new in town or that old barber just keep cutting your line crooked, hit me up at unlockyourbias@gmail.com and I'll get you connected so you can get fresh at Ty's Cut Zone. Definitely want to give a shout out to CCGG View. Met this crew at the first ever Black iHeart Radio Festival back in April in ATL. Sponsored by Charlemagne the God. Definitely helped give me a boost on my podcast journey. A lot of nice panels. Due to YouTube with their copyright restrictions, I couldn't play what I wanted, but shout out to View, My Walk. We're gonna get it in. Thank you once again to everybody that's tuning in, listening right now. Episode 2, NFL quarterback, the definition of white privilege. One thing that's coming to mind, man, when I think of the definition of white privilege in the NFL quarterback in this era, and I thought about this a long time ago when I was thinking about this episode. And once again, this particular quarterback honestly is one of my favorite quarterbacks all time. And it's no argument or debate that in my lifetime, outside of Joe Montana, which I seen play back for the 49ers back in the 80s and early 90s, primarily 80s though, Joe Montana I thought was one of the best quarterbacks ever at that time. Just seeing how he could get out of trouble, be elusive, and throw on the run. Wow, kind of sounds like how they describe black quarterbacks today, right? But we know Joe Montana was not a black quarterback, right? But he had all those attributes. So with this whole unlock segment, let's get past that. Okay, let's stop saying, oh, he's a running quarterback because he's a black quarterback. What about Steve Young? Steve Young was not a black quarterback, but that boy could run and scramble. Sometimes he'd be out there like Mike Vick. I ain't gonna lie. So let's go ahead and unlock that. For those of you that might be listening that don't watch football, but hear the opinions of others about the quarterback position, it's evolved. I don't even know if it's evolved. I think I'm going to unlock that. It hasn't evolved. It's always been rolling. Quarterbacks have always been running, have always been scrambling. Right now, I'm thinking of Fran Tarkenton back in the 60s with the Minnesota Vikings. You go back and watch some of his old clips. Boy, running, scrambling, throwing on the run. And we all know Fran Tarkenton is not a black quarterback. So come on, y'all. Let's unlock that. Let's go ahead and stop that. Okay? Right now, my hero right now is Lamar Jackson. And I just read a story just today. I was just doing some more studying right before the show. As I was sitting back, I was watching Demolition Man. I never really watched that whole movie, but I started watching it from the beginning. And boy, the future that they was talking about, it's getting closer. But anyway, I was reading this little article, and the reason why Lamar Jackson is my hero right now, if you don't know, he just negotiated his own 5-year contract worth over $200 million by himself, him and his mother. No agent. He almost held out because he knows his worth and his value. And Bill Polian, NFL executive, said, I was wrong. I thought Lamar Jackson was slight, too small, that he should have been a wide receiver. And that was in 2018 when Lamar Jackson had just come off winning the Heisman Trophy as a quarterback. 2018. So those Those biases still exist. That's why I'm doing this Unlock Your Bias. So we could try to unlock this. So any executive listening, any coach listening, come on, y'all, let's stop that. If y'all see that the player has the skill, coach them up to their position. Don't coach us down. Don't coach them down. Let them play their position. And that's why I wanted to talk about Fritz Pollard, because we think about, modern times, and we think about first. And I know we haven't run out of first yet for a lot of things. And first are great because that means people are breaking down walls and barriers. But I know I talked about Fritz Pollard and his on the field accolades, but I did want to talk about a few of the things off the field that I was just blown away by Fritz Pollard. And after he retired, he was the first black to start black investment firm in New York called F.D. Pollard and Company. He established the first black tabloid called the New York Independent News, and he managed Suntan Movie Studios in Harlem. Also founded a cold delivery company in Chicago and New York. He was a theatrical agent also. He was the only one that could book black talent in white clubs in New York. And just because he probably didn't have nothing else to do, he was also a certified tax consultant. I mean, come on. I'm going to start calling it the Fritz standard. I mean, and that has been throughout our history, the last 100 years, even in sports. I mean, he was the first one. I mean, that's a gang of businesses to start in the 20s and 30s, being a black man. So it can be done. It has been done. So we have to continue to fight those battles. Reading the time.com article, it was talking about Doug Williams, and even he stood up for the cause. The year after leading the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the time to the playoffs after they had been worse than forever. I think they was 7-37 before he got there. I remember the Bucs too. I mean, having them ugly jerseys and losing. I mean, they had a couple of solid players, especially on defense. But man, so Doug Williams led them to the playoffs. Next season, he wanted a pay raise. According to the article, he was making about $40,000 below what the NFL quarterback was making at that time. So Doug Williams said, "You know what? I'm out." He went back down south and started substitute teaching. Took that stand. Knew his worth. We have to stand for our worth. It's not enough to accept just what they give us. No matter what industry you're in, no matter what you're trying to pursue, know your worth. That seems to be a little underlying thing, but we have to know. And Doug Williams, and they end up calling him back. Gave him that bread. So unlock definition, NFL quarterback, the definition of white privilege. As I was getting ready to say about this particular quarterback, Tom Brady. He's the definition. I'm sorry. That's my dog. But Tom Brady, I mean, they changed the rule. They made the tuck rule for him. Tom Brady, I think he's probably the reason that quarterbacks don't get hit no more, because I think Tom Brady got through to the ground one time and the whole game stopped. The referees stopped. Everybody's like, no, I think they changed the rule the next day. It's called in the grasp. It's another rule that they made probably because of one person. Now that's privilege. That's privilege. The tuck rule, the in the grasp rule. So when you are making rules for one particular person or one particular class, you're creating the privilege. And one thing I do like about the pandemic was it sparked that conversation on both sides about other things, but the white privilege part really just kind of opened up. And I admire a lot of Caucasian brothers and sisters for saying, hey, and I've talked to a few I've talked to a few straight up that said, hey, you know, I didn't realize I had that privilege. Actually told me that. Mad respect. Now, do I have biases? Yes. But is it surrounding race? Sometimes. But is it part of my normal thought process? No. I'm not judging somebody based on what they look like. I'm not judging somebody based off what they wearing. I'm not trying to hide your story from you. So don't hide my story from me. You want me to be locked and you want to take my key. You can't take our keys. We need to have the keys for us to unlock our own biases, unlock our own knowledge, get this knowledge about what we're looking at. NFL's going to be starting up soon, and we know everybody going to be glued into their TVs, tablets, or whatever. Some people still ain't going to care. Some people just said, I'm not watching it, for various other reasons too. We know it's all about the money right now. It's all about not getting hit. It's all about preserving the brand, and that's what the NFL is. It's a brand. It's entertainment. And one of the articles I was reading stated, hey, for the black quarterback, it's always been about entertainment value, the highlights. But with other quarterbacks, it's all about how intelligent they are, how calculated they are. So when you're thinking about unlock your bias and you're thinking about the NFL quarterback, don't forget about Fritz Pollard, Marlon Briscoe, James Shaq Harris, and Doug Williams. These are some names that helped lay the foundation for the current quarterbacks that are killing it. Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, I mentioned him, and some of the quarterbacks that have been forgotten about. One that I always talk about is Vince Young. I think he could have been a great quarterback in this league, but he was stereotyped as being a running quarterback and not being smart enough to play the game. And eventually he was phased out. So we gotta unlock. We gotta fight to stay unlocked. So that's it. Episode 2, Unlock Your Bias. Once again, appreciate all the love and support for episode 1. And let's see, did I forget anything? I don't think I did, but I do want to say that concert was the bomb. Shout out to Vanguard, Unlock Your Bias, episode number 2, NFL quarterback definition of white privilege. Takeaway, just study the history, study the position, whatever position it is that you want to go for, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life. You have to study that position so you can play that position. And sometimes the position that you're playing, other people don't think you're supposed to be playing that position. And that's where it goes into knowing your purpose, knowing what your purpose is in life, in your home, on the job, with your family, in your business. And it's not easy to become unlocked because there's so many things that's keeping us from achieving the goal, achieving the, I was going to say dream, but dream is, I don't want to use that word because a dream is something that is only good for while you're sleeping. And when you wake up, you got to go for action. So unlock your bias, stay unlocked.
Counting stacks all day like it's my duty. Getting money, swear my life just like a movie. I'm just stacking bands. I'm just stacking bands. I'm just stacking bands. I'm just stacking bands. Daily is Versace, Gucci, Louis. On my presidential, they wanna sue me.